Hello, brothers and sisters. Today I want to do something that I kind of, I normally would avoid, but I feel like here there's something in this that speaks to other topics than what this document I'm going to show you is really about, originally centered on. And so, though this was sent to me by one of my contacts to kind of help clarify some things that have come up on different comments and conversations on my channel, I read it. I didn't think I would normally put this on a video, but because there's something in it, I've decided it would be good to share this, or at least part of this, to show you a bit of what's going on in the heads of those who are part of Homestead heritage, particularly some of the leaders, and show you a bit of why they can be so convincing, even if they're not really what they make themselves out to be. So first of all, let me explain the context of this, what this is about, why this has come up, things like that. This is basically a letter of testimony shared by Joel Stein, okay? He's one of the leaders, and he is one that has come up multiple times from people telling me either he was involved in the books Blair Adams wrote or he wrote them himself, not Blair. My contact sent me this because this clarifies exactly what was happening with the documents. Who was writing it? What part did Joel Stein play? Etc. And what he does in this is he's writing this as though a sort of confession. And as he goes through this, he's explaining how he didn't write these. Basically, the best way I describe it is to imagine the relationship between Moses and Aaron. Moses did not want to go in front of them. Moses did not want to be the one to speak to Pharaoh. He didn't have that voice. So he had to have somebody else speak for him. In a sense, that seems to be what was going on here, where Blair Adams, he was the one who was teaching. He was the one who knew truth to get it out. However, he wasn't the best with the writing. Joel Stein, I'll disagree, but supposedly was better at writing, so he took what Blair Adams gave him and put it on paper. And then, after that, Blair Adams would edit it, tell him what to remove, what to change, and he'd do so. So really, it is by Blair, but in a sense, translated by Joel Stein. And he kind of admits that in this. He's saying, I took too much credit. I tried to put myself as co-author, which I'm not. I basically kept trying to kind of confess his sin of pride. However, it goes down a very dark road. And there's a bit in that I want to talk about. So here's what he says. These have been main functions I fulfilled in the literature ministry to the extent that I have fulfilled them. I have not fulfilled an authorial role at all in the sense of originating any of the literature. It's all come forth according to the revelation, vision, and direction that God has given Brother Blair. I know that over the years my name has appeared as a co-author of much of the literature. It's an author's prerogative to list anyone associated with him in helping him to write a book in any way that he wants to. But it's now becoming inescapably clear, given the nature of this literature and the importance of clearly specifying the authority that has truly authored it in God, that my name should be removed from any place of co-authorship. I know that over the years I have recognized Brother Blair's primary role in bringing forth the literature, but because of my pride and deluded self-image, I have allowed a vagueness and ambiguity to seep into my vision concerning my contribution to the literature. Through this vagueness, I've allowed myself to inflate my view of my own importance. I've seen this before over the years, but I've never really put the pride to death, and certainly have never kept it killed. Okay. As you can see, he's confessing to what he took credit for that wasn't really his. Which shows, yes, he was involved. Yes, he did have a part to play in it. But it also shows how some people may have gotten the idea he did it all himself, or he had more of a role than we see here, because he kind of made it look that way out of pride. But there's something in here in particular to stop and consider. He's treating it as though he's taking too much credit for this. He's putting himself too high. Who deserves credit for this? Well, he says, I recognize Brother Blair's primary role. Okay, but here's what worries me. Here's the first reason I wanted to bring this up. Notice the third sentence. He says, it's all come forth according to the revelation, vision, and direction that God has given Brother Blair. So he's treating this as prophecy from God. Then, later on, near the end of this, he says this. The importance of clearly specifying the authority that has truly authored it in God. This is going right along with what we saw from Zach Herbert. They are practically treating Blair as though his books are the Word of God. Treating as though he is being inspired to write this. Now, they have not yet completely clarified if they think this is inerrant, if they think it means it's part of the Bible or not. They don't clarify, but they're giving it the same authority. They're giving it the same source. And let me say right now, this is the leadership of Homestead. So arrogant, so prideful. But this confession of pride turns into something else entirely. Because what's really sad about this is he starts going through and he starts talking about the death of his son, his wife, and how it is punishment from God for his pride. That is so self-centered. He's taking everything that happens around him, everything of his life, and making it so that it's all centered on him. Everything that happens based on him. That is the problem here. They put themselves so at the center. Everybody I've seen talking, that's what they do. They're either putting Blair Adams, which in part he's doing here, at the center, and or themselves at the center. And why that bothers me so much isn't just, though it's the most important thing, isn't just because they're putting themselves too high, but also note here when he starts being more humble what this does. By saying that because of his deeds, his wife died, his son died, etc. He's talking about judgment. He's talking about the errors and the sins. This is putting it as though everything that is judgment comes from his deeds. Everything that is good, all the good parts of this literature, is coming from Blair Adams. That's what this kind of place does. That's what I really wanted to get at. Because that's the issue. Something I brought up before and I brought up again and again in the book is the way they use you judging yourself to keep control by putting shame of everything. Everything that goes wrong, everything that's bad is your fault because of yourself. But everything good, everything right, everything that helps you comes out of the community and or Blair Adams. Now, for most people, probably the community. But right here, we can see for the leadership, it's from Blair Adams. Consider again what Zach Herbert said. He's talking about how what he wrote would have been a mess, and what Blair wrote was just so amazing. Words of God. Why? Because all the good stuff comes from him. To the average person in Homestead, it's the community. What forms the community is the leadership, the leaders. But within the leaders, it's Blair Adams. That's what this kind of place does. That's what this is all about. It's that pyramid. It's the reason they're making you feel so much guilt over everything bad, and you just respect the community and them for everything that's good. That's because the leader or leaders themselves, it's them putting themselves too high. It's them trying to get rid of their own shame, their own guilt. Even within this letter, as he's showing all these things of pride, arrogance that he did, he still brings it back to focused on himself. It's still self-centered. What's so sad about this to me is that because of that, because he is, that's why he's not seeing the errors in Blair and others. He's too centered on himself to see that. It's like the most people in Homestead Heritage who really are following, really are deep in it, they're too busy judging themselves, centered on themselves, to really look and see what's happening with others. They're not seeing what issues might pop up because they're too centered on themselves and their errors to look at those. Homestead is constantly telling them to remove the plank. Constantly. But when it's down to just a little piece of dust, it still treats it as a plank so that you never stop to look at what's in their eye. And he even does it here to himself. It is so hard to get your focus elsewhere. It is so hard to change your way of thinking, which is what they do. It takes a lot of pressure, a lot of effort. But when you're there, it's next to impossible to fix that. That's what makes this so tough, so difficult. That's why, even though, if you ask me, these issues, these problems, should have been assigned to him, that he's not in the right place. That maybe there's something wrong here. That maybe he needs to try to see the whole picture. Now that he's seen his own issues, look at what else is there. Don't just treat it as though your issue is everything. Your problem is everything. Your struggles are all that matter. That's self-centered. And yet this is supposed to be all about community. I pray more wake up. God bless.